What is the greatest gathering of Jews every year? The greatest gathering of the most Jews for one event. Lag BaOmer. In Miron, that has the most Jews. How many people gather together? Like a million Jews get together? Half a million? Half a million Jews get together. So, unfortunately this year, because of the accident a few years ago and other reasons, the war, Chas Mashiach is not the year, that's not the plan. But the question is this: what is it that is so attractive to all kinds of Jews to celebrate this day and in such an extraordinary way? Again, we'll get together with such joy. There's no other event that draws people together like this. What is it? All kinds of Jews. And the truth is that the kind of joy that Torah talks about and Jews celebrate is unique among all, even more than Shabbat, more than all other holidays. How do I know? The story of the Arizal. The Arizal had a student who would say his prayer every day that we say on the 9th of Av. The prayer to comfort Jerusalem. Prayer to build the temple. A unique prayer that we say in the time of mourning, a 9th of Av. This guy is tzaddik, this student of the Arizal, was so distraught about the destruction of the temple. He said every day, on Shabbat he said it, on holidays he said it, and it was okay. For his level, it was okay for him to do that. But when he said it on Lag BaOmer, he said it too, Arizal summoned him, the Arizal said, I'm sorry, you're going to have an early exit. In other words, you're going to have to pass away, because he didn't honor the joy of Shimon Yochai, and therefore he passed away young because of that. I mean, it's hard for us to relate to this, but the point though is that the joy of Shimon Yochai is a joy that's beyond the exile. It says about Rabbi Shimon Yochai that uniquely among all tzaddikim, he was in a zone that he lived in his environment, as if the temple was never destroyed. Where he was, as if the temple was still standing. That's I mean, obviously not the same thing exactly, because then the whole world would have it. If it was infinite, it would be everywhere. But to some extent, there was a taste of the era of Mashiach around Rav Shimon Yochai. There was another tzaddik named Mendel of Vitebsk. Mendel of Vitebsk, Mendel Haradoker. There was some insane man who blew the shofar on Mount Olives. And everyone was like, hey, maybe Mashiach came. And they asked Mendel, and Mashiach come? And Mendel said, let me check. He went out of his house, he sniffed the air, and he said, it doesn't smell like a Mashiach. And the Rebbe asked, why didn't he sniff the air in his own house? The Rebbe answered, because in his own house, there was an aura of Mashiach. You could smell Mashiach in his house. So that's the aura of Shimon Bar Yochai, the aura of Lag BaOmer. The question is, what is it so unique about this day? We find that something actually happened in this day that goes back to the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. First of all, when Moshe Rabbeinu went on Mount Sinai to get the Torah, there's a verse in chapter 68 in Tehillim, Alisa lamarim shavisa shabei. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the heavens and he took captives. The angels didn't want the Torah to be released. The angels like, Hashem, you're going to give them the Torah? Why giving human beings the Torah? And Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Hashem, respond to them. What's your argument? And Moshe Rabbeinu responded and he said, hey, it says in the Torah, I'm the Lord your God, I took you out of Egypt. Have you guys been to Egypt? It says in the Torah, you shall not have any other gods. You live among Gentiles who have churches and you need to be told not to have other gods. Why should you have the Torah? So Moshe Shavisa Shevi, he took the Torah captive from the angels. But the word Shevi is a unique word. Shevi stands for Shimon Bar Yochai. Because with the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, there's the soul of Shimon Bar Yochai. The Arizal said that Shimon Bar Yochai was a spark of the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's also, I don't remember this, if someone could help me, I think that's why we call Lag BaOmer, even though we say Lag LeOmer, it's called Lag BaOmer, because Lag BaOmer is the numerical equivalent of Moshe Rabbeinu. Have anyone heard that before? No, you heard that before? Okay, I can't do the numbers right now, but Zalman can. Lag BaOmer, Moshe Rabbeinu, figure that out. Let me know what that
Moshe Rabbeinu 613.
Okay.
Like Moshe and Rabbeinu.
Okay, and how much is Lag BaOmer? You work on that. We'll get back to you. Okay, so
What we call Moshe and Rabbeinu?
I think so. Okay. Anyways,
Logging is 32.
Yeah. Okay. So while he's working on that, another event that happened on the 33rd of Yomer was that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they had with them matzah or they had dough, according to other opinions, and they ate the leftover dough or leftover matzah. How much leftover dough and matzah do they have? They had 61 meals. All right, so they have enough matzah till today. The 15th of Iyar, according to most opinions, that's when the manna bread started to fall from heaven. They ran out of manna bread, and it started to fall, and they started to worry, and God sent the manna bread. They ran out of matzah, and God sent the manna bread, according to most opinions. But the Chassam Sofer says, amazing. He says, for 3 days, they didn't have any food. And they were stuck. The manna bread wasn't coming down consistently. Only after 3 days it had finally come down consistently. What day was that? The 18th of Iyar, the day of Lag BaOmer. That's when the manna bread started to come down consistently for 40 years. It started coming down on Lag BaOmer. And that's very significant because bread from the earth is compared to the revealed parts of Torah, and bread from heaven is the inner dimension of the Torah. So we need to understand what exactly is unique but the teachings of Rishon Bar Yochai, and why are his teachings associated with the bread from heaven, associated with the coming of Mashiach, associated with the light of Moshe Rabbeinu? What is the unique dimension of the inner parts of the Torah, and why does it cause such a great celebration of all the Jewish people? We're going to have a parade on Pico Boulevard on one day of the year. Everyone's coming together. Lag BaOmer. No other day can do that. What is it? So let's understand this from looking at one custom that people have in Lag BaOmer. One custom people have is they play with bows and arrows. And my children are wondering if they can have a chance to do that too, but I'll discuss that later. But the reason for the custom of why do people play with the bow and arrow? So the Gemara says, because what's the purpose of a rainbow? The purpose of a rainbow is when Hashem brought the flood to the world, so the flood ended, and then a rainbow was a sign that Hashem said, I promise I'll never destroy the world again. When do you need a sign? You need a sign because you need Hashem's promise. When do you need Hashem's promise? When you don't deserve to exist. Then you only exist because of the promise. But in the time of Rabbi Bar Yochai, he had so much tremendous merit that in his merit the whole world was shielded. There was no need for a promise, no need for a rainbow. His merit was sufficient to protect the whole world. So in his entire lifetime, there was never a rainbow. And that's why we play with the bow and arrow, because just like in English, rainbow and bow have the same root, also in Hebrew, keshes means both a rainbow, and keshes also means a bow and arrow. Problem is this. Wouldn't it make sense, as probably Beryl's question is going to be, wouldn't it make sense not to play with the bow and arrow on Lag BaOmer because there was no rainbow in his lifetime? Why do we specifically play with the bow and arrow? Yes, Alman?
351.
351 is Lag BaOmer?
Yeah.
How much is Moshe?
345.
Okay. We have to figure this out. Okay. Is it Lag LeOmer or Lag BaOmer?
BaOmer.
Okay. 351 is Lag BaOmer.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get this. Yes?
I just want to say that the bow, when you shoot a bow, the bow is away from you. The rainbow also is the same shape. It's pointing away from the earth.
Interesting. Anyways, the question is, why do we specifically play with the bow and arrow if the whole thing, with the whole unique quality of Shema Yochai, if there was no rainbows? The Gemara says a story about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Baruch Hashem, merited to study Torah with Eliyahu Hanavi. And they lived a few generations after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. They're studying Torah together, and they're discussing a teaching of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And they don't understand his teaching. So no problem. Eliyahu Hanavi says, let's go ask him. We'll ask him. Well, he passed away. No problem. We'll visit his chamber in heaven. We'll ask Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai what he meant. So they go to the chamber of Shimon Yochai, and Shimon Yochai is like, 1 second. Rabbi Shimon Levi, this man Eliyahu Hanavi, you want to bring him into my chamber? Is his generation ever had a rainbow? And he said, yes. Okay. If so, he cannot come in. In his domain, there cannot be anyone who has any connection to a rainbow. On the other hand, Rabban Shimon Bar Yochai is the numerical equivalent to the words Ha-Keshes, which is rainbow, which is 805. That you can check out, that I know. Rainbow, Ha-Keshes, and Shimon Bar Yochai are the same numerical value. So is he about a rainbow, or is he about there being no rainbow? Is this the manna of no rainbow or the manna of the rainbow? Which one is it?
Yeah, both.
So the Zohar says there are two kinds of rainbows. The Zohar says two kinds of rainbows. The Zohar says there are rainbows with dark colors and rainbows which have the 7 bright colors. That's what the Zohar says. There are also, it says in the Talmud, there are 3 things. You look at them, make your eyes go dim. You look at the Kohanim, look at Rabbi David over here when he does the blessings, the Kohanim, not a good idea, makes your eyes go dim. If you look at the Nasi, you look at the leader of the generation, the Tzaddik leader of the generation, makes your eyes go dim. And if you look at a rainbow, makes your eyes go dim. Why these 3 things? Because these 3 things contain the Shekhinah, have the divine presence. If you look too much, it could hurt your eyes. There's, I experienced this. Zohar experienced this. You looked at the Rebbe. You didn't get tired looking at the Rebbe. Look at the Rebbe and look at the Rebbe, and I didn't speak any Yiddish when Rebbe was leading the Farbrengen. I had no idea what the Rebbe was saying. We never got tired of looking at the Rebbe. Just looking at the Rebbe. The Shekhinah, I don't know what it is. Something with the soul and the Shekhinah. Different subject. The point is, the Gemara compares looking at the tzaddik, looking at the Kohanim, to a rainbow. I mean, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. On the other hand, it's a sign of the destruction of the world. Which one is it? The Zohar says there are 2 kinds of rainbows. There was a tzaddik named the Bishul of Rizhin. In his time, the Alter Rebbe was put in prison, and one day he comes out of his home and he sees a beautiful rainbow. He says to his students, I know for sure the Alter Rebbe was released from prison. Why? He said the sign of the bright colors of the rainbow could only be one of 2 things. Either it's a sign that Mashiach has come, or a sign that the Alter Rebbe was released from prison. He knew that the Alter Rebbe was released from prison was something associated with the coming of Mashiach, because Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov famously, I'm going to come when your teachings will be spread to the outside. And when were the Baal Shem Tov's teachings finally able to be released and spread to the whole world? When the Alter Rebbe was released from prison. So there's something about there being a positive rainbow with bright colors and a dark color rainbow. What does that mean? So understand this, to understand the whole origin of a rainbow. What's the meaning of a rainbow? All the commentaries are wondering, why do we say that the rainbow is a sign of God's promise? A rainbow is a natural phenomenon. It's a natural phenomenon to have a rainbow. So why do we say that the rainbow is a sign of God's promise? And the answer is, Chassidus says, there were no rainbows before the flood. First of all, let's talk about the flood. Why was there a flood? If Hashem wanted to destroy the world, he couldn't have just used Corona or something like that, or he could have. There's so many different ways to destroy the world. Why did Hashem use a flood? So Chassidus explains Hashem wanted to cleanse the world. And that's why it was 40 days and 40 nights, because a mikveh is only kosher if it has 40 measurements of water. So Hashem wanted to cleanse the world, and therefore he brought the world 40 days of rain to cleanse the world. That was the purpose of the flood. So before the flood, the clouds were like steel. They were thicker. They were dense. Light does get reflected by water, but the clouds before the flood, they weren't so as edel. They weren't so refined. They were coarser and denser, and therefore they didn't reflect the light. And that's why there was no rainbows. But once the flood cleansed the world, now the clouds weren't so dense. A cloud represents like sin. Just like a sin separates between a person and Hashem, so too the clouds represent there being a separation between Hashem and the person and a Jew. The sin. But the unique quality of the flood was that it cleansed the world and allowed Hashem's light to shine in the world. That's the day of the rainbow. Hashem's light is shining. The world has been elevated. The world has been purified. But we know that although the world was somewhat purified, it wasn't done yet. Mashiach hasn't come, and each of us may know some areas in the world where it's not yet 100% pure. You know any areas in the world where it's not 100% pure? Maybe you know someone who knows someone, right? We know it's not yet. Mashiach hasn't come yet. But Hashem sent every soul to the world to purify the world with another bracha, with another tefillin, with another keeping kosher. Every mitzvah doing something. Every mitzvah serves to purify the world. When Mashiach comes, all the souls will come to the world. Every single soul in heaven will come to the world when Mashiach comes. And the whole world will be completely elevated and purified. And then the Zohar says, it's not just that we'll have some light coming through the cloud. We'll have the cloud itself, the darkness itself will be transformed to light. The night will shine like the day. That's the unique quality of the coming Mashiach. And this is something we get through the teachings of Hashem Bar Yochai. This is something we get from the manna bread of the Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah. Why? What's the idea of a bow and arrow? Bow and arrow, unlike a sword, it's able to reach far away. How does it reach far away? You first pull the bow to you, and then it can go and reach a far distance. You bring it to your heart and go far away. It's compared also to prayer. When you pray to Hashem to the depth of your heart, then your prayers have a big impact in heaven. So, in a similar way, when you want to know, when you want to be able to overcome obstacles, when you want to be able to be fortified against formidable opposition, you need to be able to bring out the deepest part of who you are. In other words, let me say it in English. The deepest part of your soul is revealed when you study the deepest part of the Torah. The deepest part of the Torah reveals the deepest part of your soul. What brings out the rainbow in yourself, meaning the deepest part of your soul, or brings it all the way to you, is the rainbow of the Torah, the inner part of the Torah. That's what reveals the inner part of yourself. And that's what allows you to go far, to go beyond all the challenges, wherever the challenges are in the world, to go beyond everything else. And we see this in history. The time when Stalin came to power, there was hundreds and thousands of Jews who were religious before Stalin came to power. When he came to power, there were shuls, there were mikvahs, there were schools of all kinds. When he came to power, all of a sudden, overnight, it was all shut down. Who were the only ones who kept Judaism alive then? Only those who studied the inner parts of the Torah. Only those who studied the deeper parts of the Torah were able to withstand the challenge of that time. I'll tell you two stories. There was the story yesterday. Mrs. Silberstein, she was studying in a school in Soviet Russia, and she took she didn't want to write on Shabbos, so she wore this bandage all over her hand to say, I can't write. So I just checked the story today, and I said it last night also. I said it incorrectly. She checked at the end of class. The teacher knew that there's many. The teacher probably was Jewish too, and she knew about the Jewish kids who came from religious homes, didn't want to write. And she sees her with this big bandit, and so the teacher comes over to her after the end of the class, says, "Open your bandit. I want to see what's wrong with your hand." In other words, let's see if this is real. So she opens up her band-aid, and as she's opening it up, the bell rings. Oh, she runs out. That second, she was able to leave because the bell rang. But what's she going to do the next Shabbos? She doesn't want to write on Shabbos. What she do the next Shabbos? So what happens next Shabbos is, right before Shabbos, her mother and her cut her fingers. And so they puts on a bandage, the teacher checks it out, there's a wound there. What do you do the next Shabbos? Cut a little more. Every Shabbos they're cutting her hand so she shouldn't be able to write, so that she shouldn't have to write on Shabbos. That kind of sacrifice comes from a very deep part in the neshama. In 1972, many Hasidim were allowed to leave Soviet Russia. And they made in New York a big celebration to welcome the Hasidim, welcome the Jews who left Russia. Many of them were Hasidim. And Moshe Feinstein, Olav Shalom, was there, and he saw right away that there was two Hasidim at this event who had beards. He was very impressed. He walks over to the first Chassid, Motel Kazliner. You know Motel Kazliner? He saw Motel Kazliner. He says, "How'd you do it? How'd you have a beard in Soviet Russia?" So Motel Kazliner has told Moshe Feinstein, what we did in Soviet Russia? Every single Shabbos, every single holiday, we held on to each other. We held on to each other. We said L'chaim together. We shared an inspiration with each other. That's how we did it. Moshe was like, wow, that's amazing. Imagine someone who's had such strength from his brothers. Amazing. He goes up to other chassid. I think it was Rabbi Shneur Nottik. Rabbi Nottik, how'd you do it? Rabbi Nottik had these old glasses which were more bent up than mine, and they had like trees growing on them. And he was like, Abreira Migahat. Did we have a choice? We have a choice. And Ramesh was very impressed. Here were people who didn't have a choice. There was no other option. And the truth is, both of these answers are the same answer. These same Hasidim, Rabbi Notzik and Rabbi Kazliner, explained that they really meant the same thing. Because they got together and they verbrenged and they felt Judaism in such a real way, that's why there was no other option. That's why there's no other option, there's no other thought of eating chametz on Pesach or breaking Shabbos. It was out of the question. Because their Judaism was one with them. How did it become one with them? Because they studied the inner dimension of the Torah. Those are the Jews who held up Judaism in Soviet Russia only because the inner dimension of Torah reveals the inner dimension of the Jew. What brings out your rainbow, if you will, it brings out what allows you to go far is the inner dimension of Torah reveals the inner dimension of who you are, and that allows you to go beyond the challenges of whatever is going on in your life. And that's why this day of Lag Baimer is such a day of celebration, because it's a day of Matan Torah, the day when Hashem gave us the inner dimension of Torah. And this is the day that is connected to the day of coming Mashiach, because the inner dimension of Torah is what will allow us to transform the darkness to light and to merit to see the rainbow, Ba'anpin Nehirin, with the luminous light of coming Mashiach, which will see happen immediately. We should celebrate Lag Baimer with Mashiach Tzakenu. Nuzam, you figured out what Lag Baimer at 351, what have to do with Moshe Rabbeinu? 351, Moshe 345. Gotta figure this out. Moshe, another 6. Another 6. Umesha? No, it can't be Umesha. Oh, I know.
What's the problem?
I know Lag BaOmer. We call Lag BaOmer because Lag BaOmer is connected to the word Moshe somehow. And Lag BaOmer says it's 351.
Are you allowed to add the letters themselves to count them in? There's like tricks in it.
Right.
Sometimes it's the
The
words.
Pelo.
What?
There are some systems. I'm not sure one that can get us from 345 to 351.
Well, maybe we could do some all boss swearing.
Okay, we have homework. We have to figure this out. All right. Any questions, comments? All right. Gute Nacht.
Right.